Let's begin. I appreciate the suits guys for the chavura. It's nice to know we're getting to for tonight. Appreciate it. So we appreciate you guys coming despite not getting some simple suit tonight. So very nice. So today, it's a very difficult sugya. The next sugya is going to be a bit lighter. The rest of the blot, for the most part, will be a bit smoother. Just I'll say what we'll do next week before we get to the actual chabur tonight. Is the hope is to finish Gimel Mabez, go through. There's a few other answers, Ibai Semas, and then go through Dal Amar Aleph. That sugya we touched upon a little bit the first year, so I brought it up, but about the din of V'chi Omim L'Adam Chet Kadei Shizka Chavercha. That case of Redias Abbas. We're gonna focus on that Mitzvah Hashem next week. So we do almost like a full homage of a Gemara before the Chabura. Okay, now tonight's Chabura is a few ha'aros on this topic of the Yada Shel Adam. What exactly is the status of the person's hand? And the Rashi and Rabbi have a very interesting machlokas about the Girsa. How to understand this? We'll take it slowly, each of the Shitas. So first we have Shitas Rashi. The Gemara says on Gimel Mabez here that Amar Rabbi Pshitali, it's obvious to me, Yada Shel Adam Eina La Kershus Rabim, La Kershus Yachid. The hand of a person is not a Rishus Rabim, nor is it a Rishus Yachid. Kirishus Rabim Lo Damya Yada Dani. It's not a Rishus Rabim from the fact that the case of an ani, we'll get to Rashi in a second. And it's not Kirishus Yachim Lo Damya Miyada de Babais. We learn it's not a Rishus Yachid either. We learn from the hand of a Babais. How do you learn all this? So Rashi says, Amar Rabbi Pshitali, the 4 lines from the top, Mimasnisin de Yada Shel Adam Napshut Rishus Acher. The case is where a person standing in one Rishus, his hand is extended into a different Rishus. Eina Nizrek gets Acha Gufa Lagamre. His hand is not fully thrown after. In other words, it's not batal. We spoke about this last week. The hand is not batal. According to Shitas Rashi, we had the machlokas last week. Rashi says the hand is not batal. The hand is an independent entity than the body itself. And the other Shalom argues and says the Tosfos himself in particular says the yado is batal. Leguf. So Rashi says it's not batal legamre. It's an important word, but we're not going to focus on that right now. The Rashi Shita is the yad is not batal leguf. Lios Kurushus Shu Omidba. So the yad, even though it's in Rishus Yachid, for example, it doesn't follow the body that's in Rishus Rabim. The yad stands alone. So he says we don't say that's batal leguf. Shu Omidba. Bein Shu Rishus Yachid, Bein Shu Rishus Rabim. Regardless of where the body is, the yad is not nigrar. It's not nizrek as acher guf. Fine. Now Rashi explains the pratim. Kurushus Harabim Lo Damya. The hand is not similar to Rishus Rabim. The yad the ani. The case of the ani, which is what? The Katani Masis, our Mishnah says, Dechi Nata Balabais Mitocha Pata. Let's say an ani is standing outside and is sticking his hand with an object inside the house, inside the Rishus Yachid, and the Balabais takes from it. So we say the Balabais is Pata. Right? The ani did the Akira, put his hand inside, Balabais takes it. So the Balabais is Pata. That's Mefurish in the Mishnah. So says Rashi's understanding is, why don't we say the Yad is Rishus Rabim? Because it goes after the body. And when the Balabais takes it from Rishus Rabim, and now we stand in Rishus Yachid, there should be an Isser Hotzah. Why do we say that? Elamai, the Yad the Ani does not become Rishus Rabim, it remains Rishus Yachid, that's where it's located. That's Shitas Rashi, and again the Svara is, the Yad is not Batal Luguf. And the next case says Rashi, Ki Rishus Yachid Lo Damya, the hand is not like Rishus Yachid either, if it's extended to Rishus Rabim, miyada de Balabais. The Balabais is standing inside, his hand is outside. The katani natal ani mitacha mepater. If the ani, the Balabais hand is extended outside, and the ani takes from it, the Mishnah says it's pater. Why? If the yad is really nigra for the guf, it should be Rishus Yachid, and the ani who takes from it should be chayiv. He's not. So Elamai, we see that that case is not Rishus Rabim either, Rishus Yachid either rather. But the svara of Rashi is, the driving force for this is that the yad is not batal luguf. And Rashi says that explicitly. Rabbi has a whole other explanation of how to read the Gemara. And he says it's a situation where the ani is standing outside and his yad is outside. And it says Rabbi Hananel, if you look in Rabbi Hananel on the side here, Amar Abaye Yada Shel Adam Eina Chashuva Kirishus Yachid Miyada the Ani Hadasuna B'chutz. He's standing outside, his hand's outside, and the Balabais is the one who's taking from the Ani. So we see She'ilu Hayisa Kirishus Yachid. If you view the hand of a person, now how do you view the hand of a person as Rishus Yachid? He's standing outside. Both the body and the yad is outside. The svar here is the Rabbi Hananel thinks do we view the yad as a separate entity of the body? What's the status of that yad, regardless of where the body is? That's in the Havamina. We don't view the hand as Rishus HaYachid from the Ani standing outside wide. She'ila Haisa Krushas Yachid. Had that hand been viewed as a Rishus HaYachid, Lahaya Ba'al Bayis Hanola Mitoch HaChayim. What's the halacha from the Mishnah? An Ani standing outside with the object. A Ba'al Bayis takes the object from outside and brings it inside. What's the din of the Mishnah? He's chayiv. Now, if the yad of a person is Rishus HaYachid, Ba'al Bayis is taken from Rishus HaYachid to another Rishus HaYachid. There's no chiyuv there. So it must be that the hand is viewed as, it's not what it's viewed as, but it's not a Rishus HaYachid. It cannot be Rishus HaYachid.
The words Hanasuna Machutz mean
that the hand of the Ani is outside also, with him. We know the body of the Ani Ba'al Bayis. The question of the Mishnah is, whose hand is pointing where? So the case is, the yad of the Ani is outside, and the Ba'al Bayis is the one who's being poshaped outside. So that's okay. And the flip side, we also know the Ode, that same case, Ilu Haisa Rishus Harabim, if the hand of a person is Rishus Harabim, Lo Nischayev Ha'ani Hanola Mitocha V'hu B'bayis Chayev. Now it would also can't be Rishus Harabim, because if it was Rishus Harabim, the Ani who takes it from it when he's in the house, he would be Chayev. In other words, that if the Ani goes inside, he picks it from the hand of the Ba'al Bayis, we view that as Rishus Harabim, the hand of the Ba'al Bayis, even though he's standing inside, and he picks it up, he should not be Chayiv because he's taking Rishus Harabim to Rishus Harabim. So either way, but we know he's Chayiv in the Mishnah. So it must be the Yad is not Rishus Harabim, it's not Rishus Yachid either. That's what comes out. And it's confusing, you have to kind of think it through. It's a little bit of a cheshbon. But what comes out from all this is, when the Ramban explains Shittas Rabbeinu Chananel, the reason behind this is because the yad is batal l'guf. That's the reason. In other words, when the Ani is standing outside, says Rabbeinu Chananel, we don't view the yad as a Rishus Yachid. What do we view it as? As a Rishus Harabim, because it's batal l'guf. And the same thing on the inside. When the Ba'al Bayis is holding the object, we don't view his hand as Rishus Harabim, rather view it as Rishus HaYachid, because the yad is batal l'guf. In other words, I know it's a little tricky to get through all of that, but once you get through all of that, the Nekudas HaMachlokas between Rashi and Rabbeinu Chananel is, do you say the yad's batal l'guf or not? Rashi explicitly says yad is not batal l'guf. That's Rashi L'Shitasa, what we saw last week in Gimel Amud Aleph, and Rashi later on, Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph, we also referenced. And Rabbeinu Chananel is like Tosfos and others showing that the yad is batal l'guf, and that's what comes out from this. Again, it's a little confusing how to get there. Fine. Leave that aside.
Always?
What?
Always batal l'guf? Not like the round where when it's purchased, like we were last week. Last week we broke
I only know what we have right here, what we quoted. I'm no Bucky in Shas, and I can't say they never argue, but what I'm saying right now, this is what seems to be the consistency, but it could be there's a kasha somewhere, I don't know. Now, focusing on Shittas Rashi for a second now. We're going to ask two interesting questions we should ask, and there's very interesting lumdus that comes out. There are a few ha'aras, we can't do the entire sugya, but two very interesting ha'aras that come out from the questions on the Rashi. So Ramban asks a question on Rashi. So let's get back into the world of Rashi for a moment. The world of Rashi is that if the case is that the Ani, let's see one second, I need to recalibrate myself also, that when the Rishus Harabim, I'm reading Rashi for a second. Rishus Harabim lo damya miyado da'ani v'katani masisin dechinata Ba'al Bayis mitocha pater. So the Ani puts his hand in, and the Ba'al Bayis takes from him. The din is his pater. Why? Because the din is that the hand is considered Rishus Yachid. Rishus Yachid to Rishus Yachid. When the Ani's hand puts it inside the house, and the Ba'al Bayis takes from it. The definition of Rishus Yachid is, we're going to get to this in a couple of daf from now, is that if you have dal by dal area, and there are walls. Now the walls can come in three different ways. It can come as standard mechitzos, like inside this room. You can have a pit, where the floor is the bottom and the pit is the wall. Or you can have a mound, where the wall is actually below where you're standing, and then you view the mechitzos going out of the rakim. But you need mechitzos. Rishus Harabim can't have mechitzos. Mechitzos break off the din of Rishus Harabim entirely. If you have, this is an ervin. If you have a highway and there's a wall, there's a door, that's not Rishus Harabim anymore. That breaks up the Rishus Harabim. You have to be clear. So also, if you have a Rosh Hashanah that curves, a curve can even break up a Rosh Hashanah. So certainly in Dal Amos, so how is there a Havamina that Rashi could think, oh, maybe the Yad and the Ani is Rosh Hashanah? That's the question there, Rambam. So what's the svara of Rashi? That there was a Havamina to think that there can taka be a Rosh Hashanah even though it's Rosh Hashanah. So two suggestions. One is there's a din. We have two. I'm not a baki in anything, but certainly not a baki in Eruvin and Hatzah. But there are two halachas. There could be more, but two halachas that I'm familiar with, where you have an extension of Rosh Hashanah. It's not actually Rosh Hashanah, but there's an extension of Rosh Hashanah. One is Chori Rosh Hashanah. You have holes. Let's say you have a wall, and a wall has holes in it. So sometimes those holes, if they're being utilized by Rosh Hashanah, even though the hole itself isn't Rosh Hashanah, but it's accessed by Rosh Hashanah, that is a din of Rosh Hashanah. Excellent, very good. And there's another case. What? Mavin is a different din. It's similar. But Sidei Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes you have these areas in the shuk where you had off to the side. I don't know how my understanding of this is they used to walk down, and on the sides were all the marketplace, all the shuks, all the stores rather. And then they had these little tables. Simta comes out, alleyways and stuff like that, but these little areas up to the side where it wasn't the easiest way to travel, but when there's traffic, you take the side road sometimes, if you will. So then you kind of push it over when it's busy. So those become Sidei Rosh Hashanah, extensions of Rosh Hashanah. So what?
Like access roads?
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't quite a road, but they were like areas if you walk in the shuk in Yerushalayim, so there's the main area, and then there's where you buy the things. But sometimes things get busy, so you get pushed in the storefront a little bit, even though it's not the most convenient way to walk, but sometimes in Erev Shabbos you have no choice. That's called Tzidei Rosh Hashanah. So you have these two examples of, even though it's not actually Rosh Hashanah, it's an extension of Rosh Hashanah. So maybe Rashi was going with that somehow, that the Yad, of the Ani, is somehow an extension of the Din of Rosh Hashanah. That's one suggestion. Okay. Take it or leave it. The other suggestion, and maybe it's more Lamdisha suggestion, of getting to the root of what is the din, the geder of Rosh Hashanah. How do you define Rosh Hashanah? Is Rosh Hashanah defined by the makom, the place, the physical structures and physical measurements and dimensions, or is it based on the people who are using it, the hishtamshus, the way it's used? We discussed this the other night, last night. So, according to the Gemara, the din of Rosh Hashanah is, how many amos wide does it have to be? 16 amos wide. If you just stop by the Gemara, it would sound like it's all about the makom, the structure, the physical dimensions. Rashi and many other Rishonim, Rashi and Eruvin and Tosos, talk about you need 600,000 people as well. And there are different questions how to calculate the 600,000. Now the fact that Rashi's bringing in 600,000 might indicate that it's not only about the makom, the physical area, but maybe it's about the hishtamshus, the usage of people's using of the area. That being said, so maybe what Rashi's saying here is that since the ani is standing outside, but he's using the inside, that's called his shtamshus of Rosh Hashanah. Because he's physically standing Rosh Hashanah, but he's accessing this part of it. So if it's based on the shtamshus, but maybe the Ramban holds, no, it's all about the physical dimensions. So he says it's very physical, very, it's about, this is Rosh Hashanah, they're mechitzas, you can't have Rosh Hashanah with the mechitzas. It's all about the physical layout. And maybe that's machlokas between the Ramban and Rashi, and this would be Rashi the Shitaso, because Rashi is the one who holds, he's Machadesh, the 600,000 din and the people using it. So here's well, the Ani who's standing outside, he's using the inside. That's another step. Okay. That's all based on the question of the Ramban. Now, if you turn the page 2, and everyone good with that? Questions, thoughts, suggestions? You don't like it? Processing it? Okay, fine. Now, the page number 2, the top there, this is a continuation of the Ritva. Ritva has a different shaila on Rashi. He says, "Ein perush ze v'girsa zu mechuvar." This does not appear correct to me. Not the text, not the logic. The hapshita, it's obvious. The chayven shelo hotzi mershis loshus. He didn't do anything. Meaning, the ani put his hand inside, and the Baal Maya just picked it up and put it here. He didn't move it. It's the same exact makom. What has changed? He just did everything in his own rishus. If I take something from this corner of the room and that corner of the room, nothing has been accomplished there. So taking it from the Ani's hand, who's now inside, putting it here, putting it there, nothing has been accomplished. That's not a change of rishus. So what's the Havamina? And he says, Leka l'chiyuva mishum hotzav lo mishum achnasa. That's the question. The answer I think we can suggest is, and this is a discussion that the Achronim talk about based on Rishonim, the Tosfos and Beis Hamikdash, Aleph, which we didn't touch upon this, but they ask the following chakira: is the Isser Hotzah a Isser of changing from makom to makom, or from rishus to rishus? What that means is, rishus, the rishus means a halachic rishus to another halachic rishus, even though the makom hasn't changed, or do you need actually a different makom? So according to the Rashi, it's about one rishus to another rishus, even though the makom hasn't changed. This is my house. This is all one makom. This whole dal amos is one makom. But with the hand of the ani being a rishus rabim in the havamina, so I've changed another rishus though. So maybe Rashi holds it's about changing rishus, and that would be the Isser Hotzah. As opposed to the Ritva says, no, it's not about changing rishus, it's about changing makomos. It's the same exact makom. It's in this house before, it's in the house now. Nothing has changed, and his definition is about makomos, not about rishus.
So what about walking dad amos in Rishus Rabin? Is that a different?
Different.
Okay.
Being mavir b'dal amos is a question of havara. You're not changing rishus there.
So it wouldn't be a contradiction to that.
Yeah, that's a different halacha. How that we haven't touched upon. All right, just to be clear, our whole focus now of Hotzah is one rishus to another rishus.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't talked about zorek from one rishus to another rishus. We haven't spoken about being mavir dal amos, being zorek dal. But that's another discussion.
One of the thoughts I'm thinking of is in Hilchos Brachos, you have a big trachlim. You go from one end. To
Right, but that's different. But
the door.
And that's Hilchos Brachos though. No, it's a good. But it's not. No.
Would you consider it a separate?
Who said that the halachas Hilchos Brachos is Torah and the halachas of Hilchos Hotzah? Two different areas. Completely different areas. Now, if you want to connect, but that's not Hotzah though. No one said rishus to rishus. Just because you say makom makom doesn't mean the halachas. Unless you have some raya that you're connecting to, you got to connect by Karban Pesach. That's a good shayla. Karban Pesach, the Gemara says, if you're motzi from chabura chabura, and the Gemara Pesachim connects that to Hotzah and Shabbos. So there you have already the Gemara connecting a different halacha. Hilchos Brachos, to my understanding, there's no connection. I understand tu makom shina makom. I understand why you would think to, but I don't think anyone actually bridges the two together, to my understanding at least. Okay, fine. Now, fine. So that's about Yado Shel Adam. Now the Gemara goes weiter and asks a question. Bai. After Bai establishing it, being very, very clear that the hand is not a Rishus Rab nor is a Rishus Yochid, then he says, but I have the following shayla. Bai Yado Shel Adam Ma'u Shetasa Kekarmelis. Maybe it should be Kekarmelis. I'll explain what that means in a second. Mi Kansu Rabbanon Lahadurei Lagabe Olo. Did they make a knas for him to bring it back in? So what does that mean? So there are arba rishuyos. The Gemara is going to tell us, I think it's Daf, maybe it's going to tell us that there are 4 different rishuyos, 4 different domains of Hilchos Shabbos. One rishus yachid, I explained the different ways to get rishus yachid. Rishus Rabbi, we just explained as well. And then there's a din derabbanan of a karmelis. A karmelis is pretty much any public area these days, certainly in the 5 towns, any highway, any road is a karmelis. It's not rishus yachid, there's no mechitzas. And it's not rishus Rabbi because either it's not 16 amos wide. 16 amos wide, we're talking 32 feet. Most of maybe Peninsula might be that wide, but it doesn't have 600,000 people traveling a day. So there's no din of Rishus Rabbi. So what is it? What?
You need both 16 amos and...
Yeah, we possibly need both, yeah. So now...
He said it's not Rishus Rabbi.
Yeah. I don't think it's...
Because
a lot of sorry stuff.
Because of 600,000.
Yeah. It's not that busy.
And also, I don't know if it's a halakha, but it's 600,000 different individuals. I mean, if you have a town of 1,000 people, you have no chance, even if you're running back and forth.
Yeah, the different ways how to make a cheshbon of it. Is it on that same road at one time throughout the day?
Mm-hmm.
How do people live in the city?
Back in the day, they had 600,000 people.
In the midbar, that's what it's based on. That's based on the Yidden walking through the midbar.
Times of the Gemara, they had Rishus Rabbi.
They talk about it, yeah. I mean, we think that only we had these, big cities. They have big cities. They have skyscrapers, but there are people also. So,
They didn't have AI and robots.
Right. We think they're very antiquated. With Hashem, we should be zocheh to learn many zmanim together. We get to Choshen Mishpat. People who are in business, they see how much how familiar they were with business, like all the things that are mechadish in law and finance. It's all in the Gemara, like how to invest, how to loan money, ribbons. It's all there. Like they're like, and so that's why people who learn yeshiva are such good businessmen. All the secrets are here. You don't want to teach Chosh Mishpat to just anybody, because when a person learns Chosh Mishpat, he could be crack the code to anything, mamish. It's like the AI. It's like before AI existed. That's what it is. Everything's there.
Let's switch up the
Fine.
wheel.
But then let's get back.
Think of the pyramids. Think
What?
of the pyramids. I mean, think of that.
The technology back then. They have bricks. We don't know how they built them. They had more things that we who knows what happened.
Smarter than us. Let's put it like that.
Fine. So where we're going up. So anyways, so Carmelis is the outside is certainly not Rosh Hashanah. There's no mechitzas. And it's not Rosh Hashanah because there's not 600,000 people. What is it? It's a Carmelis. It's an Isser to carry it, Midirbana Isser to carry in it, and that's the din of a Carmelis. They wanted to know, does the Yad have a din of a Carmelis? In which if a person put his hand outside, then is he not allowed to bring it in? Does he make a knas, he can't bring it back in? Or is he allowed to bring it back in? So that was the question of the Gemara. So...
Because he'd be bringing a Carmelis inside.
Yeah,
He'd be transferring his hand of a Carmelis.
Yeah, let's look at Rashi. Rashi explained the question. Make it clear. Rashi writes, Boy Abai. Hash the Chazina, now that we've seen the La Basa Gufa, the Search Shadina, we don't follow the body. The Yad is independent. They didn't Ichuvet Mediraisa. Iflug Rishusa, it's independent. Mi Achmir ala Rabbanan Limeheve Carmelis. Do we say the Yad is like a Carmelis? The Heicha, the Hoshit Yadam Milea Rishus Acheres. If he has a full, he's holding something, he sticks his hand to a different Rishus. Lo Yachzirana Esla, he should not bring it in. V'tei Kach Pshuta Ad Shetechshach. He remained that way the whole time, meaning his hand outside is now a Carmelis. And then if he brings it in, he's bringing it to Rishus Yachid or Rishus Rabbim, whichever way it is. The Chayvin de La Basa Gufa Greira, Nasas La Rishus Acheres, becomes independent. Midirbanim, the Gazer Rishus Midirayim, the Shabbos, Sha'asa Lahachnis Losi, he has to remain, keep it where it is. Mimenu Rishus Yachid or Rishus Rabbim. So the din is, the person in Midirbanim cannot carry from a Carmelis to Rishus Yachid, or from a Carmelis to Rishus Rabbim, or vice versa. He can't do any of that. Now, when the guy's hand is inside, it's completely fine. Let's say he puts his hand outside. Where he goes there, that his hand becomes a Carmelis. And if he were to bring it back inside, he's bringing from a Carmelis to Rishus Yachid. Everywhere it goes there, that was the Shiloh of the Gemara. The Gemara has two brises, the Asr Mutter, and gives around 5 answers. We'll, Miz Hashem will go through next week. But in the Shiloh of the Carmelis, Tosfos asks a question. He says, the Lashon the Gemara, Tosfos Dibur Maschem Mikan Tzur Rabbanim. We're not going to get to everything. I'll say this outside because of the sake of time. He says, even though the Gemara has a Lashon Mikan Tzur, Knas was a penalty, Tosfos doesn't like this. Near the read the Garis Mi Asruha, below Garis Mikan Tzur. What's the difference? Either way, it's only a Dirabbanan. The point here, Tosfos, is that did they make the Yad into a din of a Carmelis, a real halachic Carmelis? Or just a Knas, a penalty? They used Carmelis as a model, but it wasn't really a din of Carmelis. That's the Shiloh, 2 Girsos of Tosfos.
So what's an afternoon now?
He brings. So there seem to be, maybe two nafkamina. So we'll say this outside just because, for the sake of time. So the Ritva writes, it has to be actually the Ritva we can see inside together. Look at number 2, the Ritva there. Ritva writes, reading just the bold to make it clear. Regardless of the scenario, whether he's in Rishus Yachid and his hand Rishus Rabbim, or whether he's Rishus Rabbim and his hand Rishus Yachid, either way, the question is whether he could bring it back to where he is. Perish Nakel Lashon Kanasa, he takes a gears of Knas, he likes that. The L'kshatim Salomar, the heavy Carmelis, when we said it's Carmelis, you also lachzir, and you can't bring it back to where you are. Ain't a Mishusha, not because it became a halachic status of Carmelis. She'ain Carmelis, Ela B'davar Kavua, the regular Beirab. It can only be where people are walking. So how can you say if the guy's standing outside, his hand's inside, how can you say the guy's hand becomes a Carmelis? It's inside the house. So it's not a real din of a Carmelis, it's a Knas. They use Carmelis as a model, but it's really just a Knas Baal.
But he is giving us gather for Carmelis. It has to be, there's
Yeah, exactly, very good. Which is why he doesn't like it as a real Carmelis, but we're not going to, it can't be Carmelis because it can't be in Rishus Yachid. Exactly.
The nail of the fact that his hand is not in a place where it's
Exactly, 100%, exactly. What comes out after that is that this din is not a real Carmelis, it's just a Knas Baal. Now the Rashba argues, Rashba says not true. The Rashba says that the question here is only, he agrees to the svara of the Ritva, that you can't have a karmelis in Rosh Hashanah. And he says actually it would be mutter in that case. So if a person is standing inside, this way, the guy's standing outside, and his hand is inside, he's allowed to bring it back outside. That's permitted.
Outside, inside, back outside.
You could bring it back. Why? Because inside the house can't be karmelis. So there's no din. Why not? Says the Sfas Emes, and the Rashba, he says, because the Rashba holds it had a real din of a karmelis. If there's a real din of a karmelis, you can't have a karmelis inside of Rosh Hashanah. So it's actually allowed. If you put it inside, you can bring it outside, because it never, on the reverse, if the guy's inside, puts his hand outside, oh, that could become a karmelis outside now, and then it'd be also to bring in. So the machlokas between the Ritva and the Rashba is, was this halacha, this sad, that the yad's kekarmelis, is it mamish kekarmelis, a din of a karmelis, or just a knas that was domit lekarmelis? Nafkamina being, the guy puts a hand inside, would it be also to bring it outside or not? If it's only a knas, it's also as well, because it wasn't really taking on the halachas of a karmelis. But if the din was that it's a real karmelis, then a yad can't be a karmelis inside a person's house, and it wasn't also in that case, and we must to bring it outside. That's an afkamina.
But there's no machlokes. According to the Sfas Emes, he holds the same lumdas like the Ritva.
He does, but they agree that karmelis can't be inside. But the question is, what's the status of the yad? Is a yad a real karmelis, or is a yad just a knas?
According to the Ritva, it's a knas, and according to the Rashba, it's what?
It's a real din of a karmelis.
How? I'm sorry, I don't see it. How?
What, for the Rashba?
Yeah, from the Rashba.
Because he says the fact that you're allowed to bring it, the fact that your hand goes inside, and your hand cannot be a karmelis inside a house.
And you can't learn that to knas.
Because he explicitly writes his mutter in that
Right,
situation.
right, right, right.
Yeah, that's what Sfas Emes says.
But in the case of where Shnei Turim, when the yad of the honey, he pulls it out.
Okay, say again that with the case of the
Shnei Turim, where the Bamba does the kiro, gives it to the boss of the honey, pulls it outside, the honey father, mother.
why?
Because he's yad of karmelis, he pulls it outside, and he's going from karmelis to Rosh Hashanah.
No, but he still does a hanacha versus Rabbi though.
Yeah.
The question we're talking about when it's usher to take it outside, that's the shayla.
Right, so it's about he didn't do anything wrong by taking it outside though. Physically, even though he does the hanacha, his hanacha was mutter, right? He takes it away from the bags and brings it outside. That action was mutter. Because if he's on the inside, it's big kabbalah, he takes it out.
I have to think about it, so I'm not sure.
Is it the same question with the Makam Batur transferring ways?
Malcolm
I
Tur.
mean, is this same sugya if he sticks his hand up to the level above the Rosh Hashanah, that is a Makam Batur?
So that's what Tosos talks about. That's the question of Tosos. We don't have time for this, but Tosos and Khan, and then all the Rishon talk about this case, he puts it out like high up. That's Malcolm Batur. That's, you could bring that back inside. So there's a whole, I can't get to it now, but either way, on base, should we do it? What, Mahar's 10:15?
It depends on when people
Yeah? Fine, so we'll go through this yeah, fine. We're good right now? Is it too much? Yeah?
It's a hard word I find from the Rashba.
Yeah, okay.
If
We'll work it
the
out. we'll work it out.
Balabais puts his hand on the outside, when they're both, in the case of the Shnei B'Torah, when the Balabais puts his hand on the outside, and it has a din, according to
So it's below 10 tvachim, that's part of Rosh Hashanah. That's din v'karmelis, it's aser. If it's lamala, so Rosh Hashanah only goes 10 tvachim high. So if it's lamala, it's only makom batur, he can bring it back in. That's what the Gemara says. Okay. So Tosa asks the question, why does the Gemara only say that's mutter to bring in when it's lamala b'yid? It should be mutter even b'motzi lamala yid, it's makom batur. To go from Rosh Hashanah to makom batur is completely allowed. So the implication of the Gemara is, if a guy put his hand out, only if he did it could he bring it back in. But it implies l'chachila you should put your hand outside the mal b'yid. Why not? Ask Tosos. Tosos says no, you're right. That's vadei mutter. It's vadei mutter to take your hand outside. If you're standing right side by Rosh Hashanah, your house right by a highway, you can put your hand back and forth, completely mutter. The question, the chiddush of the Gemara is, let's say a guy put his hand below yud, which is now a din of a karmelis, which is Rabin. He's allowed to, says Tosos, to bring it up outside, get to the makom batur, and then bring it back in Rosh Hashanah. That's what he says. That's Tosos' chiddush. Now, what comes out from this is second here. Right. So yeah, so there's a whole shaila about whether or not you're allowed to, in general, even though from a karmelis to Rosh Hashanah it's allowed, you're also allowed to do karmelis to Rosh Hashanah, it's allowed. But what you can't do is midirbanim. You can't go Rosh Hashanah to karmelis to Rosh Hashanah because now you're like it's a loophole. You came from Rosh Hashanah, that's not allowed. That would be a problem. How do you do it? You're going Rosh Hashanah, you're doing the whole thing. How's that allowed? So he says we only say this by deraisas, not by derbanans. And since we're talking about this karmelis being a derbanan, his hands are derbanan, the whole discussion, so therefore he ends up saying it's fine. This is the Ramban. You have to see some time to appreciate this. Now the Ritva, the Shitasa says, I don't understand what you're talking about. We're not talking about a real karmelis. It's not a discussion. Well, what's the shaila? That's a kanas. It's completely allowed. There's no shaila here. The hand's a joke. It's just a kanas. It's not a rishus. It's his fifth category. We have rishus yachid, rishus rabbim, karmelis, makom dur, and again the fifth tiny rishus. It's completely allowed. But he says even though really it should be allowed to do this, nonetheless he writes that it looks funny. He agrees it looks funny. It doesn't look like the chamer making a joke, and because of that.